Good morning. I have spoken often of St. Ignatius of Loyola, as well as Ignatian spirituality, the spiritual exercises, and my favorite kind of prayer, imaginative contemplation, which is also something that St. Ignatius has invented, created, supported through his retreat work and through his teachings. St. Ignatius was an amazing person, and yet so very ordinary, so much like all of us. He grew up in Spain. His parents died very young. He was kind of a lost soul for a while. He followed one of his older brothers into the army, and he began a life of a soldier. He loved dressing up in the armor and being a man of the court. He was very vain and liked the way he looked in good clothing. One day, there was a terrible fight for the city of Pamplona in Spain. The French were coming and claiming it as their own, and the fighting was horrific. The cannonballs, the swords, the spears, the men dying on both sides. Most of the army fled, but Ignatius, as an officer, with a number of his men, climbed into the tower, the last point of resistance, and tried to fight off the French with every effort they had. In the midst of that fighting, as they were losing ground and the French were getting closer, a cannonball broke through the wall behind which Ignatius was fighting and shattered his leg. The war was over, the city had surrendered, and Ignatius was taken prisoner and then actually just let go because he was no good to anyone. He was so injured. He almost died. During his recovery, he was listless. He was, as you can imagine, at a total loss and in much pain. And he asked the people who were taking care of him, "Is there anything for me to read?" So they gave him the only two books they had, a Bible and a book of the saints. Now, Ignatius was not a spiritual man. He was a man of the world. He loved his beautiful looks. He loved fighting for honor, and he always saw himself as rescuing the damsel in distress. So being stuck with the Bible and a book of saints really wasn't much consolation. But he didn't have a lot of choice. It was a long and painful recovery, and so he dove into those two books. Eventually he turned his life around. He was the founder of the Jesuits, and as I said before, he founded the process, the spiritual exercises which allow us to spend deep time, whether it's on retreat or just in the models of prayer, finding God in our hearts, in our imagination, and in our efforts. But Ignatius and those who write about Ignatius will often talk about the cannonball moment, the moment that shattered his perception and his reality and left him with something alternative. He was pushed to find a new way of living and to assemble a new set of values. You and I have cannonball moments in our lives as well. Moments that are dramatic in that they force us to shift from one reality to another, to change our mind, to change our perspective. And it's so valuable to us to be able to identify what was that pivotal moment. What was that cannonball moment for us? And then to look deeper and to say, is there a path, a trail that God lays before us, leading us from that one moment to all that is to come? Spend some time this week reflecting on what God has done in your life and where were those painful moments where, gosh, we had no choice but to respond. Ignatius is with us, as is God's Spirit. What was your cannonball moment? And what is God leading you to?